では定刻になりましたので、第13回目の計算科学技術特論 A を始めていきたいと思います。本日は理研 IX から、淳先生に来ていただいております。本日の講義は英語で、行っていただきますので、ただ質問とかそういったことは日本語でも結構ですので、よろしくお願いします。Today's talk is given in English. The title of his talk is Parallelization of Molecular Dynamics. Please start.
Introduction. So now I'll talk about parallelization of microdynamics. And first, I want to say thanks to Dr. Geshi for giving this time to introduce the microdynamics parallelization. Before starting the parallelization of microdynamics, I'll briefly explain the MD. What is MD and what you can do in MD. So overview of MD is already explained in the last week by Dr. Yoshi. So I'll go in detail, but say very briefly. So in molecular dynamics, we first describe energy and forces using classical molecular mechanics force field. So for each atom, we define the parameters for bond, angle, and so on. So after assigning the parameters of each particle, we calculate energy and forces. And if we calculate energy and force, we update the coordinates and momentum according to this equation of motion. And from this equation of motion, we can propagate coordinates and momentum using this integration. By doing this kind of integration, we can find long-time MD trajectories. And these MD trajectories can be used to generate the ensemble. And this ensemble is used to find many thermodynamic quantities like free energy, and entropy, enthalpy, and so on. So, in fact, these long-time MD trajectories are very important to obtain thermodynamic quantities of a target system. If you want to find a reliable free energy calculation, you should calculate MD at least from tens of nanoseconds to microsecond or even millisecond. So in MD, we can describe the potential energy in this way. So in MD, the energy consists of bonds, angle, dihedral, and non-bounded angles, and non-bounded interactions. So in the case of bonds, angle, and dihedrals, the calculation cost is just order of n. So this is almost negligible. But in the case of non-bounded interactions, the computational cost is order of n squared. So this is the main bottleneck in MD calculation. So nowadays, no MD program does not calculate non-bounded interaction in this way because it is very time-consuming. So people are just making several approximations. And one of the most popular, famous expressions is to decompose these non-bounded interactions in real space and discrete space. This non-bounded interaction consists of van der Waals and electrostatic interaction. Van der Waals interactions decay, energy and forces are decay very rapidly by increasing the pairwise distance. So we can introduce some cutoff value, threshold of the pairwise interaction. Then the interaction of van der Waals can be, the computational cost can be reduced to order of n. And also, unlike the van der Waals interaction, electrostatic interaction requires very long-range interaction. So if we just introduce cutoff like a van der Waals interaction, then the energy and forces are not accurate at all. So to reduce the computational cost but keeping the accuracy, we decompose the electrostatic interaction with this way in the space, and another way by reciprocal space interaction using FFT. So let's go more in detail the non-bonding interactions. This is the non-bonding interactions. The first two terms consist of a van der Waals interaction, and last term is electrostatic. First, van der Waals interaction. You can introduce some threshold for the pairwise interaction. Then the computational cost is easily reduced order of n. And electrostatic interaction, we should calculate very long-range interaction. So we decompose the electrostatic interaction into three terms. Real space calculation. In this case, we introduce cutoff like van der Waals, and reciprocal space interaction. In this case, we calculate the energy not in real space but in reciprocal space, and another self energy, which is a constant. And further, using this scheme, we can reduce the computational cost from order of n squared to order of n, and this part order of n log n. And further, we could reduce the computational costs by properly distributing over parallel processes. So then why we require parallelization of MD? Because the integration time length is very small. We should limit the MD time step just 1 or 2 femtosecond. But on the other hand, many biological meaningful events occur on the time scale of milliseconds, microseconds, or in some cases even longer. So let's see. The atom vibration occurs at the femtosecond level. So that's why we should limit the time length just 1 or 2 femtosecond. And the side chain motion occurs from picosecond to nanosecond level. And protein main chain motions occurs from nanosecond to microsecond level. And you can find protein folding phenomena from microsecond to millisecond level. And protein global motion will occur at the millisecond level. So we need you need to calculate energy and forces very frequently. And that's why we need to parallelize MD program. So there are many ways to accelerate MD calculation. But here, I'll focus on the parallelization. By making use of parallelization, you can accelerate the MD simulations. For example, one protein calculation using one CPU. So the parallelization is very simple. If we make use of 16 CPUs, and we can parallelize the interaction, then can we have 16 times acceleration of MD? If it's possible, then you can just increase the number of processors. And nowadays, in Japan and in all of the world, there are many supercomputers. And you can use such supercomputers to accelerate the MD and to obtain the biological meaningful event. But for good parallelization, we require two things. It requires a small amount of computation in one CPU. Based on this, we need a small amount of communication. So now I finished the overview of MD, and I'll go into the parallelization very briefly. Here I'll talk about three parallelizations. The first one is shared memory parallelization, and the most representative of shared memory parallelization is OpenMP. In this case, all processors share data in a memory. So, in this case, just assume that processor 1 writes data in a memory. Then such data can be read in processor 3 or processor 2 and other processors. So they can share the data. But in this case, it's very easy to write. And you don't need to design the whole structure. You can just consider the kernel, and you can easily parallelize the kernel by using this OpenMP. But in this case, you should keep in mind the memory usage. For efficient parallelization, processors should not access the same memory address. So just assume that this processor accesses the memory address. At the same time, just assume that other processor write the same part. Then the result is not reliable at all. So this is very important in OpenMP parallelization. And one more thing is that this kind of shared memory parallelization is only available for multiprocessors in a physical node. So nowadays, in a node, there are many number of cores. In this case, you can assign shared memory parallelization, but you cannot assign this kind of parallelization for 2, 3, 4, and many number of nodes. So please keep in mind that this parallelization is useful only for one node. Another parallelization is distributed memory parallelization. The most representative is MPI, which is message passing interface. In this case, each processor access to different memory. So different processors does not know other processor. So just assume that this processor writes some data on memory. And this processor does not know which is written in this memory. So in this case, we need communication among processors. So we need to send data or receive data using this message passing interface. In this case, the key point is that we need to write a program to reduce the amount of communication as small as possible. So efficient parallelization equals the communication amount is minimized. And the next one is hybrid parallelization. This is some kind of mixture of MPI and OpenMP. So nowadays, many computers has a multi-core in a node. Then we can use OpenMP in a node. And for different nodes, we can make use of this MPI procedure. Then why this hybrid parallelization is important? One of the reasons is to reduce the communication cost. Just think about there are 10 nodes, and each node consists of 16 cores. Then overall, there are 160 cores. If you just make use of MPI, you need communication among 160 cores. Then computational cost becomes very large, and in some cases, the communication latency is not negligible. But if you just parallelize inside a node using 16 cores, and if you just communicate among 10 nodes, then you can just assign communication among 10 nodes. Then communication cost is reduced, and communication latency is also reduced, and you can increase the parallel efficiency. So nowadays, in almost supercomputers, we require this kind of hybrid parallelization to maximize the parallel efficiency. But one thing I can say is that if you just make use use of a very small number of processors, then I think MPI is okay. You don't need to parallelize by OpenMP. So according to my experience, MPI is faster than OpenMP if you write the source code efficiently. But if you want to make use of a very large number of processors, then this kind of hyperparallelization is necessary. Then there's another kind of parallelization. This is called low-level parallelization. This named SIMD, single instruction and multiple data. See, you can just think about the vectorization of a code. So a few tens years ago, in Japan, there are many vector machines, and such vector machines like this kind of things. But nowadays, even CPUs can do some kind of vectorization using this way. So nowadays, Intel machines and almost CPUs, you need to consider this SIMD to increase the performance. So I'll say briefly, just assume that there are 3 arrays, A, B, and C. And each array consists of 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4. And B also have 4 elements. C also has 4 elements. And you wanna obtain the array C by adding each element of A and B. One of the simple way is first, you can obtain the first element of C by adding the first element of A and the first element of B. And you can go to the next. You can find the second element of C by adding the second element of A and B. In this case, you need 4 addition procedure. But if you make use of SIMD, then they just A1, A2, A3, A4 is assigned as 1 element. And B1, B2, B3, B4 is also assigned as 1 element. Then you can just obtain these 4 elements of C just doing 1 addition. Then you can increase the performance 4 times faster. So this is very useful when you write the program. So same operation on multiple data points simultaneously is the point of SIMD. This is usually applicable to common text like adjusting graphic image or volume. But nowadays, in most MD programs, this becomes one of the important topics to increase the performance. Another kind of parallelization is SIMT, single instruction and multiple threads. This is used in GPU. So nowadays, people say that GPU is very fast. And in many applications, GPU is much faster than CPU. Why? Because in GPU, we can make use of this kind of parallelization very efficiently. So SIMT is some kind of combination of SIMD and MIMD. So SIMD is single instruction and multiple data. This one is multiple instruction and multiple data. So one thing I can find is that if you want maximize the performance using SIMD, then you need to avoid if and end if sentence. If there is if or end if, then compiler does not recognize the way of SIMD. But in the case of GPU using SIMT, even though there are if and end if sentences, you can proceed this one. So this one is usually used in GPU, And nowadays, it's related with GPGPU, General Purpose Computing on Graphic Processing Unit. And currently, now, it usually makes use of CUDA. And in CUDA, usually allows 32 threads for SIMT. So because usually warp size of GPU is 32. So 32 means that you assign the one instruction. And according to one instruction, 32 threads do the operation at the same time. And using this kind of SIMT, you can increase the performance 32 times faster. So this is a structure of a GPU. In the case of GPU, GPU consists of several blocks. And each block consists of several threads. And if you assign one instruction, these threads do the same thing. And they reproduce the different data. And finally, you can just collect all the data and find the result. So now let's go to the parallelization of MD in real space interaction. In fact, there are several ways of parallelization scheme. And now I'll start the easiest one, replicated data approach. In this case, each processor has a copy of all particle data. And each processor works only part of the whole works by proper assigning of two loops. So let's see. So you can consider this kind of two loops in non-boundary interaction. First, there's a two loop of I index and another two loop of J index. And you can find the energy between pairwise interaction of I and J, and also you can find the forces from I and J. The easiest way is to distribute these two loops according to number of processors and my current length. So if you perform MPI, then each processor has their own ID, which is named length. So MPI length. And each processor so identify them as such a kind of length index. And also, they understand the total number of processors by performing MPI. And by distributing the outer loop, we can reduce the amount of computation by the number of processors. But in this case, finally, you need communication using reduction. So each processor has their own energy data, and each processor has his own force data. And each processor want to know the global data. In this case, definitely you need this reduction procedure. But problem is that this reduction requires quite large amount of communication costs. So this parallelization is used 20 years ago, but nowadays this parallelization scheme is used only in very small number of software and in very special cases. Of course, even in the replicated data approach, you can assign hybrid parallelization by combining MPI and OpenMP. So we distribute the computational works over MPI and OpenMP sets. And we can assign parallelization after the calculation of energy and force. So this is the conventional flat MPI parallelization. And the right one is the hybrid parallelization. So what is different? First, we assign the process MPI length. And also we obtain the total number of MPI processor. And after that, we, in each MPI, we assign OpenMP comment. And according to OpenMP comment, we have another kind of identification in each MPI length. So then we distributed this to loop according to MPI length and OpenMP length. And you can skip according to the product of a number of MPI processes and number of OpenMP stats. In this way, you can reduce the computational works. And after finishing OpenMP, we need same kind of reduction among MPI processors. If you have a time to access to download GENESIS software, then there are two simulators named ATDyne and SPDyne. If you check the ATDyne simulator, then you can see the parallelization scheme like this way. Then, so what is the good thing and better things of this parallelization scheme? Good thing is that it's easy to implement. Even though you do not know MPI very well, even though you have no idea of parallelization so much, somehow you can do parallelization. But problem is that this doesn't have good parallel efficiency. First, nodal imbalance is a problem, and communication cost is quite large. And it requires a large number of memory because every processor should have all of the data. The second parallelization scheme is domain decomposition. This is the most popular parallelization scheme in molecular dynamics. In this case, the simulation space is divided into subdomains according to MPI. So here, the simulation space is divided into 9 subdomains. And each subdomain is again divided by the unit domain named cell. And each processor just calculates energy and forces inside each domain. And if it's necessary, they sometimes calculate interaction between different domains. But we do not consider interactions between this domain and not neighboring domains, but not next neighboring domains. We do not consider interaction between these two domains. We only consider interaction between neighboring domains. The good thing is that first, we can reduce the communication cost. In this case, we only require communication between neighboring domains. But in the case of a replicated data approach, we need a reduction of all processors. This is the main difference. And the amount of memory is also reduced by increasing the number of processors. So each processor has the data of only the subdomain. So for this, if we have 9 processors, each processor has just 1/9 of the all data. But problem is that it's difficult to implement. And you should consider the design from at the before starting the parallelization. And design is the most time-consuming part in this case. So now I compare two parallelization schemes, replicated data and domain decomposition. So computational cost is the same if they are perfectly parallelized. But in the case of communication, domain decomposition requires much small amount of communication, and memory is also small. So if you want to perform very large system on K computer, then this domain decomposition is definitely necessary. Then how about the reciprocal space? Now go back to the electrostatic energy. So in the case of electrostatic interaction, there are many ways to calculate. And in the last week, Dr. Yoshi explained FMM method for electrostatic interaction. And I think, yeah, FMM is a very good way to increase the parallel efficiency. But here I'll just focus on the particle mesh yield scheme because this is the, I can say, most common calculation in all MD programs. So here, energy is decomposed into three parts: real, reciprocal, and self-energy. And this reciprocal energy consists of exponential factor times this structure factor. And structure factor can be approximated by FFT and B-spline approximation. So this reciprocal space interaction requires FFT. And in parallelization, FFT is the most difficult thing to be parallelized because they require the communication in not locally but globally. So in MD, one of the important thing is to parallelize FFT. Then in MD, we calculate reciprocal space interaction in this procedure. First, there is an electrostatic charge in the space. And using B-spline approximation, we convert the charge on real space to charge on grid data. And this charge on grid data, we perform fast Fourier transformation. And this fast Fourier transformation, transformed charge grid data is used to find the energy. And this data is again multiplied by another prefactor. And this one, we perform inverse Fourier transformation. And after that, we find force calculation. So we need two FFT. One is forward FFT, which is necessary for energy calculation. And again, inverse FFT, which is again necessary for force calculation. So in one MD step, we need to perform two FFT. So as for the parallelization of FFT, there are three decomposition schemes. The first one is one-dimensional decomposition scheme, which is also named slab decomposition scheme. So in this case, each processor is assigned a slab of size n times n over p for computing of n times n FFT on p processor. So this is the easiest and the fastest for small number processors. But the number of processors should be less than the number of grids. So this is a very good thing. In fact, very good parallelization scheme. And this parallelization is used in almost FFT software like FFTW, FFTE, and also MKR library. Almost FFT libraries make use of this decomposition. But problem is that if you want to use very large number of processors, this one cannot be used. So this is the overall way of FFT. First, we distributed the data in X dimension. And each processor will perform Y and Z direction FFT. And after that, using all-to-all communication, we have a data in this way. And finally, we perform X direction FFT. So this one has 3 steps. Two-dimensional or one-dimensional FFT along the 2 local dimension. And we need to transpose globally, which is identical to all-to-all communication. You can think about this one is global transpose. And one-dimensional FFT along the 3rd dimension. In fact, this is very fast. The fastest for small number of processors. But it cannot be used for very large number of processors. And the second thing, second parallelization scheme is named two-dimensional decomposition. This is also named pencil decomposition because this shape is similar to pencil. So in this case, we need 2 global transpose. In other words, we need 2 all-to-all communications. But this one, in this case, we can increase the number of processors quite much. And this is the most commonly used scheme in supercomputers and in all most softwares. Now, FFTW, FFTE, and even MKL, you can choose this 2D decomposition FFT. And almost MD softwares, NAMD, Chromex, and so on, make use of this 2D decomposition FFT scheme. And this is, in fact, a little bit more difficult to implement. Here, just assume that there are 16 processors. First, we perform FFT on Y direction. And each processor has a global data in Y direction. And you can perform the FFT in Y direction. And after that, these 4 processors, among these 4 processors, we assign all-to-all communication. And again, these 4 processors, we assign all-to-all communication, and so on. Then each processor has a global data in G dimension. And you can perform FFT in G dimension. And after that, we again assign all-to-all communication among these 4 processors and these 4 processors. And we can find the global data in X dimension. And you can perform FFT in X dimension. So in this scheme, we need to perform at least 2 MPI all-to-all communications. So the number of steps is increased from select decomposition. Here, we perform one-dimensional FFT and global transpose, means MPI all-to-all communication. And again, FFT in another direction, and communication, and FFT, and communication. In fact, the last communication can be skipped if you do not require the same array structure of input. So if you, I'm not sure how much you performed FFT, but in FFT, there are 2 ways, in place and out of place. In place means that the input and output structures are identical. Out of plane means that input and output structures are different. If you can make a program such that output can be different from input, then you don't need this communication. You can reduce the communication just 2. But if you wanna make the same array structure as input, then you again need to another communication. So in this case, 3 communications are necessary. The good thing is that the global transpose requires communication only between subgroups of all nodes. So all processors are not involved in the communication, but just the subgroup of processors are involved. If you see this, in this communication, even though there are 16 processors, only 4 processors are involved in the communication. So you can reduce the number of processors involved in the communication. So good thing is that you can increase the parallelization by increasing number of processors. But problem is that so if you just wanna use very small number of processors, then this is definitely slower than selective composition because the number of communication is twice. So this is used in many FFT program, and also this scheme is used in many MD programs. This is the pseudocode of this focus space calculation with 2D decomposition of FFT. So I think I'll just skip this part, but if you are interested in how to do, then you can just check this pseudocode. So now I set parallelization of the space and the parallelization of this focus space. So then now I'll explain the parallelization scheme of existing MD programs. The first MD software I will say is GLOMAX. In fact, nowadays, I think GLOMAX is one of the fastest MD software. In fact, this is designed very well, and parallelization is also very well. GLOMAX makes use of a multiple parallelism scheme. For ensemble calculation, they generate many replicated data for replica exchange method or minimum prudence method and so on. So they first assign processors for each replicated data. And each one, they assign domain decomposition using MPI. And each domain, if they are GPUs, they distributed works on GPU and CPU. So if the GPU is very useful for computational intensive works, but GPU is not recommendable if there are many communications. So if there are works that does not require communication, then GLOMAX assign it on GPU. So real space computation is performed on GPU. And reciprocal space calculation is performed on CPU. And again, even on CPU, they maximize SIMD, single instruction and multiple data. So there are 4 ways of parallelism. The first one is SIMD. So usually this SIMD is used for cluster interaction kernel or boundary interaction. So the core part is parallelized by SIMD. And again, inside the domain, they assign OpenMP multithreading. And if they are GPUs, then they also distribute the non-boundary interaction by GPU and CPU. And they assign MPI for each single domain. And as for the domain decomposition, they assign this kind of HL scheme. So each domain just send the data to downward and left. And this data also send the data to down and left. In this way, they can send and receive data very well. And also, they adjust the domain size to increase the load balance. And GLOMAX makes use of SIMD and SIMT quite well. And as for this, I think GLOMAX is one of the best program regarding the SIMD. So in fact, SIMD is very difficult to reproduce. If you compile the software by Intel, then you can see many do loop is vectorized or do loop is not vectorized and so on. If you see such do loop is vectorized message, then it is you can just think that the loop SIMD is well applied. To assign this SIMD, they make some group according to SIMD width. So they make a different SIMD kernel according to architecture. So it's difficult to say, but let's consider the different architecture of Intel CPUs. The most recent is KNL, Lightning Ending. In the case of Lightning Ending, you can assign 16 SIMD widths because it's 512-bit machine. Then GLOMAX makes use of kernel such that 16 SIMD is available. And let's go to the Haswell machine. In the case of Haswell, 8 SIMD is available. Then GLOMAX makes use of a kernel for 8 SIMD. So they make use of different SIMD kernel according to architecture. And in the case of GPU, 32 SIMT is available. So they make a kernel such that 32 SIMT is available. Another popular MD software is named NAMD. And NAMD is based on CHARM++ parallel program system and runtime library. In fact, CHARM++ is some kind of interface program. So CHARM++ makes some scheduling of parallelization. And in NAMD, subdomains named dispatch are decided according to MPI, and forces are calculated by independent compute objects. So if you see, there are patches. This is identical to subdomain in domain decomposition. And according to each patch, they decide the object of computation. And they distribute these computational objects. And another one is Desmond. Desmond is developed by David E. Shaw group, which is the group is also very famous for Anton and Anton 2, the world's fastest MD engine. In the D. Shaw group, they also make a MD software named Desmond based on midpoint method. According to midpoint method, they decide the interaction point between particle pair as midpoint. So if you see the particle number 3 or number 4, sometimes you should decide which domain should calculate the pairwise interaction between this particle pair. And in the case of Desmond, they decide the interaction point as a midpoint. So interaction between number 3 and number 4 is decided in subdomain F. In this way, they can communicate the data up to half of cutoff distance, and they can reduce the communicational cost quite much. And in Desmond, also, they have their own FFT parallelization scheme. Usually, as I said before, usually people are making use of select decomposition or pencil decomposition using all-to-all communication. But according to this, such all-to-all communication is time-consuming. and it's better not to assign all-to-all communication. Instead, they make use of, they parallelize one-dimensional FFT by performing directly the butterfly communication. So let's see. They are one-dimensional FFT, and they are, for example, they are assumed that 8 grid points in y direction, another. And processor 0 first calculated 2 one-dimensional FFT at some part. And processor 1 also do. And after that, after finishing this one, send the data to processor 2. And processor 2 send the data to processor 0. And processor 0 perform not only this, but also this. In this way, if each processor finish the one-dimensional FFT, they can have all of the data. But problem is that in this case, the number of grids should be power of 2. So because this scheme cannot be used, for example, assume that 63, then it cannot be decomposed well. So problem is that the number of grids should be only the power of 2. And now I move to the parallelization scheme used in GENESIS. In fact, I'm one of the developers of GENESIS, and so I most focus on the parallelization on GENESIS. GENESIS makes use of a midpoint cell scheme, which is a little bit different from this midpoint method used in Desmond. So first, the overall spaces are divided by MPI processors, and each MPI processors are divided by cell, which is just a unit subdomain. And according to this midpoint scheme, they decide the intersection point for each particle pair. But we notice that such particle pair checking can be time consuming. And instead of checking particle pair, we check cell pair. So midpoint cell for each cell pair. In some cases, midpoint cell is not uniquely defined. For example, like this. In this case, we assign the midpoint cell as to increase the load balance. And as well as the real space midpoint cells method, which for real space interaction, we also consider different kind of parallelization scheme for FFT, where now we used volumetric decomposition FFT. So if they are here, they are assumed as 64 processors, then and each processor has a data of in each sub-cubic cell. To perform FFT in this direction, we need a data, global data in this direction. So among these 4 processors, we perform one-dimensional all-to-all communication. Then each processor has a data like this one. But they have a global data in this direction. And you can perform FFT. And again, back to this structure. And next, we need to perform in this direction. To do this, these 4 processors have some MPI all-to-all communication. And then you can have a data structure like this. Then you can perform FFT in this direction. And the same thing. So what is the good thing of this scheme? In fact, this scheme requires many communication. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 communications are necessary. In the case of selective decomposition, 1 communication is necessary. And pencil decomposition, you can assign only 2 communication. So comparing to these schemes, this requires much more communication. But the number of processors involved in communication is much small. Here, the maximum number of processors involved in the communication is just 4, even though this is a global communication. And the number of processors involved in the communication is just a cubic root of a processor. If you consider, for example, 4,000 processors, then the number of processors involved in the communication becomes 16. Let's see the K. If we consider 60, if we consider, for example, 32,000 processors, then the maximum number of processors involved in communication is 32. But if you consider selective composition, the number of processors involved in the communication becomes 32,000. Too much. In the case of Pencil decomposition, the number of processors is just square root of a processor. So square root of 32,000 is greater than 100. So the number of processors involved in the communication should be larger than 100. So this FFT is not useful for a small number of processors. But if you want to perform very large size data on massively parallel supercomputers, this one can be very useful. And another good thing of this scheme is that we can assign the same decomposition between real space and reciprocal space. But if you assign slab decomposition or pencil decomposition, then the structure, domain structure are different to each other. So even before starting FFT, we need another kind of communication. And in fact, in NAMD or GLOMAX, this communication is more time-consuming than FFT itself. And also, I'll just briefly explain how to increase SIMD in GENESIS kernel, in particular for Intel CPUs. And one of the simple way is to change the array of structure. So the simple way is to change the structure from array of structure to structure of array. So what is different? Now coordinates has three-dimensional, x coordinate, y coordinate, and z coordinate. Usually people make an array in this way. The first x coordinate, first y coordinate, first z coordinate, and second x, y, z, and third x, y, z, and so on. This is a conventional way. In GENESIS code also we have this kind of structure. But if we change this array structure to all x coordinate and all y coordinate and all z coordinate, then you can increase the SIMD in Intel machine. So in Fortran case, you can just simply change this array to this one. In this case, the array is from 1 to 3, means x, y, z, and number of atoms in a cell and number of cells. And here, we transpose these first two as 1 to n atom and 1 to 3 and cell. In this, just by changing this structure, and you can increase the SIMD quite much. So in particular for Haswell, Blowell, K9 machines. Then also, up to this, you can obtain good parallel performance. But in some cases, to use supercomputer, there are more things to take care of. So here, one of the things used in MD software is MPMD, which is named multiple program and multiple data. This one means that, so overall processors, in some cases, some processors are assigned for real space, and some processors are assigned to reciprocal space. So if you have 48 processors, then GLOMAX might assign 32 processors to real and another 16 processors to reciprocal. And the reason is very simple. Anyway, FFT, reciprocal space interaction requires FFT, and the number of processors should be minimized in FFT. And the idea used in GLOMAX is to reduce the number of processors in this space, to reduce the communication in FFT. And at the same time, some more processors are used to real space. So now these schemes are used in GLOMAX and CHARM MD software. But in this case also, I found that there are problems. For example, between at each MD step, among these processors, they need communication. For example, number of processors are different. Here, we assign 32, for example, 32 processors and 16 processors. Then the communication pattern is not one-to-one, but one-to-all. And this requires a very large amount of communication. And in these cases, we cannot assign multiple time-step integration, which is mentioned by Dr. Yoshi in the last week. So, but in multiple time-step integration, we can skip time-consuming FFT at several times. So usually we don't need to calculate the FFT every step, but it's sufficient to calculate the FFT every other step. But if we assign this kind of things, then such multiple time-step integration is not available. And that's why GLOMAX does not introduce multiple time-step integration like NESPA. But I thought that if we assign the same domain decomposition between real and reciprocal, and if we can assign the processors involved in the reciprocal space calculation also can do integration, then I found that multiple time-step integration could be available. So for this, you need the same domain decomposition between real and reciprocal space. And this space also should be involved in the integration. Well, according to GLOMAX or CHARM, these processors are not involved in the integration. They just send the false data to real space, and that's all. But yes, somehow by assigning the same domain decomposition, we can first assign the processors for real space and reciprocal space interaction, and based on this, we can assign the multiple time-step integration. Then I have a question. So if we calculate FFT, then yeah, some processor calculate this, and other processors calculate reciprocal space. It's okay. But if we assign multiple time-step integration, FFT is skipped. In this case, these processors just idle or do something. So not so to work, even though there is no FFT, we even divide the real space interaction by 2 interaction space. And if FFT is required, then real space processors calculate all of this. And reciprocal space just calculate the FFT. And if FFT is skipped, then this real space is subdivided by 2 intersection space. And real space processors do this one. And this space assigned for FFT also do another part. Then doing this, you can maximize the overall performance. So this is a flow chart of the MPMD scheme. So in the conventional integration, where less part is not introduced, this processor calculates boundary interaction and real space interaction. Another processors only calculate reciprocal space interaction using FFT. And finally, we accumulate the data and do the integration. In the case of multiple time step integration, if FFT is required, this processor calculates bounded and real space interaction. Another processor calculates reciprocal space interaction. You can and accumulate energy and force. But if this reciprocal space interaction is not necessary, this processor do some subspace of the real space interaction, and we can maximize the performance. So now I'll move to the benchmark performance result. This is the benchmark result of GLOMAX in 2014. In this case, GLOMAX makes use of CPU and GPU. So not only CPU, but also GPUs are assigned for this. In fact, for this case, ribosome, GLOMAX has a very good performance. But in some cases, GLOMAX makes use of a very large time step. I said that usually time step is from 1 to 2 femtosecond. But in this case, GLOMAX makes use of 5 femtosecond time step using GLOMAX's virtual site scheme. But considering that, I think this performance is quite good. Parallel efficiency is also very good. And for this one, 12 million atom system, GLOMAX shows very good performance. This is the most recent benchmark result of NAMD. And the left one is for 1 million atom system, and right one is the 21 billion atom system and 224 billion atom system. In this case also, NAMD makes use of GPU. And in the case of NAMD, they make use of multiple time step integration, where reciprocal space interaction is not calculated every step, but every 3 steps. But even considering this, so now NAMD also shows good parallel efficiency. This GPU should have a good performance result, and even for this one, they have a very good result. And another trick, not trick, but another scheme usually in NAMD is to increase the interpolation supply in order, but reducing the PME grid number. So usually, people are assigning very large number of FFT grids, but that requires a large number of communication. So NAMD reduce the number of grids just half by increasing the more calculation of interpolation approximation. So this is another way to increase the parallel efficiency. And this is the parallel efficiency result of GENESIS 1.1 open in this summer. Now, left one is just PC cluster in our laboratory, and right one is the on-K computer. In the case of left one, so the target system is 1 million atom. So identical to this one. And scalability is good. And now problem 1.1, you consider several ways to increase the parallel efficiency. One thing is to replace double precision to single precision. And another thing is to assign multiple time step integration and GPU and so on. And this one is for 28 billion atom system. And using on K computer, it's scalable up to 16,000 nodes, and if obtain good parallel efficiency. And recently, we also tested the benchmark using MPMD scheme with multiple times integration. And for 5 systems, this one has around 90,000 atoms. This one is slightly more than 200,000 atoms, 1 billion, 8.5 million, 28 billion atom system. And even for 28 billion atom system, it's scalable quite well. Here I plot the scalability on not log plot, but real plot. And I obtained the performance of the 25 nanoseconds per day. And also, I tested GENESIS on K9 machine in Okuflest. Now I tested 1 million atom system and 66 million atom system on K9 machines. So as you see, so even on K9 machines, we obtained a very good parallel performance using efficient domain decomposition and volumetric decomposition of FFT. In fact, I wanted to try more number of processors, but the maximum number of processors assigned to me is 2,000. So I could not test much bigger system. So this is a summary. Now, in the case of parallelization, you can consider distributed memory like MPI, shared memory like OpenMP, hybrid, and SIMD and SIMT, and so on. And usually, real-space parallelization can be done by domain decomposition. Reciprocal space parallelization, there are many ways of parallelization of FFT, like select decomposition, two-dimensional pencil decomposition, and so on. And further, nowadays, people improve the parallel efficiency of MD using MPMD scheme, GPU, and so on. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now we open for a discussion. If some question, please say. 日本語でも質問構いませんので、質問があれば受け付けたいと思います。いかがでしょうか。日本語全然ジュンさん OK ですのでいかがでしょうか。じゃあ私の方から、フローチャートの図があったと思いますけども、これはコンベンショナルのやつと違って、このマルチタイムステップの場合、この全体をマネジメントするところがないと、ロードバランスが崩れたり、そういうことはないでしょうか。
だからロードバランスもちょっと考えてやるしかないんですね。だからだからこれはノードバランスの問題がちょっとあって、だってプロセスがちょっと少ないとき見ると、この客スペースよりはリアルスペースの方がもっと時間かかるんで、ちょっと待ち時間とかがあるんです。だからこのスキームは、プロセスが小さいときは、そんなにいいスキームではないんです。
ラージスケールのときに。
はい。で、プロセスが大きくなるときは、FFT はどうしても、 並列がいかない部分があるんで、その部分ではそのように分けてやったら、もっと並列とか良くなるんで、やるだけです。だからこれ見ると、ここを見ると、このノー NPMD と NPMD があるんですけど、このプロセスが小さいときは、ノー NPMD の方がパフォーマンスがもっといいんです。だからこれは今言う通り、ノードバランスの問題はあるんで、小さいプロセスよりはプロセスが大きいときだけ使うようになります。
ありがとうございます。他いかがでしょうか。Are there any questions?じゃあちょっとここで一つコメントだけちょっと言うとこと途中でバタフライの話がありました。これはこの計算特論 B の方で高橋先生がこれに対して詳しく説明されてますので、またそっちを聞いていただくか、あるいは出しました本の2の方ですね、あちらの方にこれに関する記述もありますので、もし勉強したい方いらっしゃったらそちらに書いてありますので見ていただければいいと思います。でちょっと質問を考えていただく間にジェネシスのムービーがあるので、ちょっとそれをお見せしたいと思いますので、ちょっとスイッチします。
Mechanisms of life simulated through supercomputers. We are inside a cell in a substance called the cytoplasm, which is packed with a vast number of molecules. It is here in the cytoplasm that complex and diverse reactions involving proteins, metabolites, and other biological molecules of various sizes are orchestrated. New computer programs developed to simulate complex behaviors on the K computer reproduce the movements of tens of millions of water molecules and thousands of large molecules within the cell, making up approximately 30% of the cytoplasm, all at the atomic level. This is a ribosome, composed of RNA and proteins, the factory that synthesizes proteins from amino acids. These barrel-shaped proteins are molecular chaperones, called GRO-EL, that fix misshapen proteins. Giant complexes such as these hardly move at all under the conditions of the simulation. Smaller proteins and small RNA fragments, however, move more actively, despite the crowded environment. And smaller metabolites like ATP move faster still. These simulations show metabolites in the cytoplasm seeming to slide along the surface of proteins and jump between proteins. Future experimental studies are expected to confirm this. Because proteins are surrounded by other proteins in the cell, their structures were thought to be more stable in this environment than in pure water. The simulations, however, show that complex forces acting between different proteins may destabilize them significantly. Protein structure and reactivity are also strongly affected by electrostatic effects of the many metabolites and ions in the cell. Small molecules, such as metabolites and drugs, bind to protein active sites, where they may cause chemical reactions or inhibit normal functioning. There is constant competition between the various proteins and small molecules within the cell, and simulations that take this crowded intracellular environment and its many competitive interactions into account may help predict yet unknown effects, such as potentially dangerous side effects of some drugs. Our understanding of the movement and function of individual molecules within the cell is making huge strides thanks to the use of supercomputers. Identifying the mechanisms underlying many living processes is advancing basic science, but may also lead to the development of new therapeutic drugs.
KLN の上でチューニングする上で注意とか特徴とかそういうことがあればいくつかお願いできます。
では、メモリが一番自分の経験にはどうしてもメモリを使い方が重要じゃないかと思います。まず、MCDRAM と、グローバルメモリがあるんですけど、できればグローバルメモリ、DRAM は使わないようにして、MCDRAM だけ使うようにするのが、重要です。2番目は、やっぱり心理が中毒心理までできるから、単精度で、心理ができるように書く必要があるんですね。で、多分それで一つがそれなんですけど、僕が経とかでやるときは、この2つの例が結果が全然変わらなかったんです。でも、インテルコンパイラーは、上の例でやるとちょっとできないし、心理がちょっと良くなかったんですけど、そのように変わったら、良くなる部分なんで、できれば心理をする中の例は連続アクセスができるようにが重要です。で、もう一つは、他のものではハイパースレーディングがそんなに良くなかったんですけど、KNL はオクプレスでやってみると、ハイパースレーディングオプションでやってみると、ほとんど結果が、2倍まではいかなくても、とっても良かったんで、できればハイパースレーディングもできるように、コードを書くし、やってみるといいんじゃないかと思います。で、MD だけ関して言うと、一個一個プロセスは、クラックスピードはとても低いんで、難しいのは、やっぱりコアが多いんで、あれでは1ノードでも MPI をたくさん使わないといけないんです。全部オープン MP でやったら早くなるか思うんですけど、そうでもなかったんで、だから、むしろ KNL をよく使うためには、もっと並列がいいように、アルゴリズムとかを考えないと、たくさん使うのは難しいんじゃないかと思います。
非常に今貴重な情報だったと思います。他にいかがでしょうか。
この NPMD に、コードを変えるというかを作るにあたってなんていうんですか どのぐらいこう複雑になったかみたいなのの感想をお聞きしたいんですが。
各 NPMD でやるためにはたくさん変わります。だから簡単なコンデルだけ変わることではなく、むしろコンデルパターンはそんなに変わらないんですけど、これが問題になるのはやっぱりその一番外のインテグレーションなんで、インテグレーションを全部できるように買わないといけないんで、これ自分でこれ書くときは、本当に新しいプログラムレベルで書きました。
なるほど。ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。他にいかがでしょうか。よろしいでしょうか。じゃあ、大体終わりに近づきましたので、本日の講義はこれで、終わりたいと思います。では最後に、拍手でもって潤さんにお礼をしたいと思います。どうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。